Well, welcome. You join me in session at Girton at the Cove Fishery. Ian's just shown up. I did get here last night. Well, I got here yesterday actually. I was doing some work with Nash. Decided to stay on for a session piece with you guys. Got a load of bait out last night. This morning got 3 rods out on the spot. We're fishing at range to the far side. Had a bite, landed it, so I've got that one to show you still. Had 2 quick bites since then. Lost one just before Ian arrived, and now we're in again. Hopefully I'll land this one. But it's looking like it could be a nice little session, this. Fishing style is something a little bit different to what I'm used to. We're going to be fishing a long way to the far side, like I said, so we'll run through that in a minute. But right now, I'm going to concentrate on playing this, get it in, and start a session piece with fish. How good is that when you start a video already with a couple of fish in the bag? Well, this is a nice start to a session. Last time I went out with Ian, I had to work and struggle for a bite. And this time, before he's even arrived, I had a fish in the sling. Not a massive carp, but a really, really nice one. Beautiful colours on it, a nice little lin. And then just as he pulled up, he hadn't been here more than 2 minutes, just set up the bite can, and we got another one. How's that for a start? Not bad at all. I think we're gonna catch a few more. Gonna get the other one out and show you him, slip him back, get the rod back out, and then hopefully we'll catch a fair few more of these lovely, lovely carp. And here's the other one, pound or 2 bigger maybe. Another lovely little carp. There's some stunning carp in here. They go up to mid-30, so if we catch one that's mid-30 that looks like this, yeah, it will be a great session. Like I said, gonna get him back, get that rod back out. I think we will catch quite a few more based off of how this session's already started. Okay, the rods are back out. We're fishing again. We've got a little chance now to collect ourselves. This session is going to be all about long distance fishing. It's about 120 yards to that far margin where I'm fishing. It's quite a long way for me, but I'm equipped with a load of new tackle that's making it easier than ever. I've got the F20 rods, the LR 10,000 reels, and some new distance mainline. It's making it so much easier than it would be in the past if I was fishing this style. So, like I said, this session is all about that style of fishing. We're going to run through a few things later about how you can get the best out of fishing this long distance method. Fingers crossed we catch a few more. I really think it's on the cards that we are going to have a few more fish. So until we get that next bite, get to sit back, chill out and enjoy the beautiful surrounding we're in. But I really don't think it's going to be very long until that R4 lets out a few more bleeps and we're in again. When it comes to baiting at range, you've literally got 2 options. You can either use a boat, which we're not allowed to on this situation, or you've got to use a spod. I'm using the dot spod MIDI. Flies amazing and you can get quite a bit of bait in there. When it comes to the spod rod, I'm using the matching F20 12-foot spod and marker rod. It's about £5 test curve, can cast these big weights really, really well. I'm not really having much trouble hitting the clip at that 120 yards. When it comes to bait, I'm going pretty simple. I'm not putting too much bait out there because I know it's not been fishing very well. The fish in here, they do get fed a bit of pellet by the owners, so I'm using high quality pellet, monster shrimp pellet. That's making up a good part of my mix. But then I'm also throwing in some monster shrimp boilies in 12mm. These nice little boilies, they're packed full of nutrients. I think at this time of year when the fish are starting to switch over after spawning towards that autumn feed period, having a good selection of boilies in there does help as well. And that is literally my mix, super straightforward, just boilie and pellet. I'm not going crazy with the bait out there. Like I said, this has not been fishing too well, so I think a spot or 2 over the rods is going to be more than enough to keep those bites coming. Well, it's gone a little bit quiet and I'm seeing fish show, so there's definitely carp out there, but I just can't seem to get a bite. So I'm going to go for a little change of approach. I'm going to keep the 1 rod out there that's done me 2 bites. 1 rod I'm going to change over to a matching hook bait, and I'm going to put a little PVA mesh bag of pellet on as well. See if that little bit of extra attraction can nick me a bite. And then on the 3rd rod, I think I'm going to put a zig out there. It is very deep, this water. It does shallow up to where I'm fishing, but there's quite a bit of depth there. I know from the one time I fished here in the past that zigs do well. It's clear water, so everything does scream, get a zig out there, especially when there's fish on you and you can't get a bite. So, little change of approach. We're just getting to the tail end of the afternoon. like I said, I feel like I should have had another bite. So we've got to bring a few changes and see if we can muster up a carp by doing that. Right, the rods are back out, all sorted with fishing. We're moving into the evening now, so I thought I'd run through the hardware I'm using that's allowing me to fish at that range. So let's start off with the rods. I'm using the brand new F20 Air Force rods from Nash. We do them in 12 and 13 foot, in 3.5 and 3.75 pound test curve. I'm using the 12 foot, 3.75 pound test curve. If I wanted to go even further, I might actually use the 13 foot, 3.75 pounds. But for what we're fishing here, up to about 120 yards, yeah, they are absolutely bang on. When you're getting a distance fishing rod, you want to think of a couple of things. The first one is that length and that test curve. You want a nice, long, strong rod to help you get the distance. And then the most important thing really is the blank. You want a really high quality carbon blank that will recover quickly once you cast, which will help propel the lead even further. If you have a cheap blank, the tip will be waving around all over the place, it won't recover fast, and you'll lose a lot of distance in your cast. We use a 30-ton carbon Japanese blank for these rods, which means you've got really quick recovery time, and you've also got a lot of longevity in the rods. If you have a lower tonnage carbon, it will break down faster over time, the rod will start to go floppy, you'll lose that distance. So if you want to make an investment for a long period of time in a high quality, long distance fishing rod, these are the rods you want to look at. There's plenty of other features on them, the minimalistic design, the 50mm butt rings, everything like that is all available to see on the website, but the most important thing for you to be aware of is that high quality blank. That will assure you you've made a good investment in your long distance fishing rod with these Air Force F20 rods. Now moving on to the reels. When you're distance fishing, you want to have a big spooled reel. This will reduce the amount of friction that the line encounters when it leaves the spool. You've got to imagine if you're using a really small reel, when it hits the top of that spool, there's loads and loads of friction, and that's going to reduce your casting distance. By having a big spooled reel, there's less friction and it will allow you to cast further. These reels are also relatively light, which means that you can move them faster through the air, generate more tip speed and get a further cast. The weight, size and even the aesthetic match those Air Force rods perfectly, and I don't think there's a better reel match on the market. Mainline is another important consideration when you're distance fishing. You can't fish with really, really thick mainline. Going back to that friction issue, it's going to generate lots of friction, which is going to reduce your cast. So I've gone for 12-pound Skyline mono, which is a dedicated distance fishing mono. I'm actually fishing it in the UV yellow coloration. I quite like this when I'm fishing at distance because it lets me see exactly where I'm fishing to, and when I'm bringing fish in, it allows me to really easily maneuver my line if I have to move it between rods, anything like that. A dedicated casting line like this is really important when you're fishing at distance because it means the line is going to be as thin as possible, which is going to let you fish at your absolute maximum. However, because of how thin this line is, you have to be aware that sometimes when you're putting your maximum force into the cast, if you're fishing with that line straight through, you might snap it. You might get a crack off. So what you want to do is you want to fish with a shock leader. That's what I'm doing here. I'm fishing with a length of shock leader in 30-pound, much like you would do if you were spodding. And that will just help absorb the initial impact of the cast and means I won't get any crack offs. So just to round that off and go back over the hardware you need for casting at distance, it's a long, powerful rod with a high quality blank, just like those Air Force F20 rods. It's a large spooled reel, just like those LR 10,000 reels, and it's a nice thin casting mono with a shock leader. I can't believe we're going into the evening period and I've not had another carp to show you. I've definitely had fish in front of me today. I have tried different hook baits, gone a little bit closer to the far margin as well, but I'm thinking maybe what I needed to do was put a zig out there, and I'm thinking if tomorrow morning comes by and I've not really caught much, I will try and fish out some zigs on that far margin. We did have a big spell of action this morning, so I'm hoping that we're going to get that again tomorrow and I can get 2-3 bites in that morning period. But for now, yeah, I'm going to keep the rods as they are. Hopefully I nick 1 or 2 in the night, who knows, and then we'll reassess come the morning. But yeah, I felt like I should have had a couple more today. But that's fishing sometimes, you can't always catch them, so yeah, we'll see what the night brings and then reassess in the morning. Well, I was just crying to you lot about how I thought if I had a bite and not had one, and my right hand has pulled up tight. Yellow pop-up, it's been out for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah, we're into another carp. Oh, thank God for that. I've been scratching my head all day about why we've not had more fish. So to finally get another one, yeah, feels good. Well, I'm well happy with that one. Right on dark, just as the sun's setting, proper old Aggie one, just to ease my nerves a little bit. So I'm feeling a little bit more confident going into the night now. I think we'll pick off 1 or 2 more, and then hopefully we have that little feeding spell tomorrow. So yeah, chill out for the night, see if we catch any more. Well, morning, and it has been quite a busy night for me. Nothing happened until about 3-4 o'clock, and I did actually wake up around 3 o'clock thinking, oh, I can't believe I've not had another one. The feeding spells do seem really condensed on here. Went back to sleep, and then an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I had 2 bites in quick succession, both of them subtle little drop backs, and I've landed 2 really, really nice mirrors. One of them's a really nice scaly one. So it seems like the plan is still going well. I managed to get the rods back out again without too much of an issue onto the spots. So I think we're looking like we've got a good chance of catching another fish. We're going to stay till about 11-12 o'clock. And if yesterday's feeding spell in the morning is anything to go by, then we should be in for a little period of action here. I'm going to get those 2 fish out now and show you. Like I said, one of them is a really, really nice carp. And then after that, I'm just going to run through how to get the most out of your bite indication when you're fishing at this range. Obviously I'm fishing with mono and I'm fishing quite a long way out, and you do need to make a few changes to your setup to ensure that you do register those bites. Like I said, every single bite so far has been the tiniest, most subtle drop back, and if I hadn't have got my bite alarms, swingers, everything set up to the way that they are now, I don't think I would have even got a bleep and they would have been registered, and I would have stayed in bed without knowing that I'd had that bite. So let's get those fish out now, and then I'll talk to you about that bite indication, how to get the most out of it when fishing at range. There we go, another lovely mirror. Part of the 2 fish I had this morning during a nice little feeding spell. Lovely carp. The fish in here are, yeah, a really, really good quality. The colours on them, I'm loving. Wait till you see the other one as well. I've got a really, really nice scaly mirror. Yeah, this is the first one. Not sure what it weighs, maybe up a double. Yeah, a lovely carp. They've all been this sort of size, but I know there's a few big ones in here, so fingers crossed we catch one of them. The session is going quite well. Quite pleased with myself. There we go, the other part of that brace from this morning. Another beautiful dark scaly mirror. Can't really complain when they look like this. I'm really hoping we're going to catch one more fish. We've got a couple more hours left, so get this one back. We'll run through that bite indication that I talked about earlier, and then wait for that hopeful final bite before we head off home. Bite indication when fishing at range is something you really need to consider, especially if you're fishing with monofilament. There's a few things that I do to ensure my bite indication is as good as it can be. I'm going to run through those things now. First up, you may notice I'm fishing with my tips right up in the air. And this is important, especially on a lake like this where it's so deep in the middle. If I was fishing conventional super carpy style, tips down, then it would allow that line to sink into the middle of the lake, and it would really reduce my bite indication. By having my tips up and a tight line down to that lead, my bite indication is improved massively. Moving down from those tips, I go on to the alarms. Now I'm using Siren R4s in their most sensitive setting number 1. They register any movement on that alarm when the lead's moved, so that be a drop back or a pull forward, it's going to be registered on that alarm. Due to the speed sensing of the R4 alarms as well, it does minimise wind movement as well, so pretty much any time it beeps, I'm coming down and having a look because I think it could be a fish. However, if the wind or the waves are really, really savage, you will get a few false bleeps, so just move up the sensitivity setting, but when you can, be as sensitive as possible on your alarms. You may notice that I'm fishing with swing arms, which is something I do like to do when I'm fishing at distance. I think when you've loaded them up with the weight right at the end of the swing arm, it really does pick up those drop backs especially. So as soon as I'm getting that drop back, it's picked up on that swing arm. I do think that these are much better than especially a light bobbin. Even a heavy bobbin, I think that these still outperform them, but I would definitely recommend not using a light bobbin when you're fishing at range because they just won't pick up those drop backs. And finally, the mainline I'm using. Like I said earlier, I'm using Skyline mainline, which is a dedicated casting mono, which is excellent for getting the distance, but it's also great for bite indication because it is so low stretch. Stretch is the biggest hindrance to bite indication when fishing at range. It's why I would prefer to fish with braid because there's zero stretch in that, but most places don't let you fish with braid. So in this instance, fishing with that dedicated casting mono with low stretch will really help my bite indication. Even by combining all of those things, the bites still have been really, really subtle, but they have been registered. They've been enough to wake me up at night. And I think if I hadn't have done these things, there's been times where I wouldn't have even known that I got a bite and I would have lost the fish. There's a couple of hours left of the session. It's still feeling good for a bite. I'm hoping that we get one more fish before we have to head off home. Well, let's quickly talk about the rig that I'm using on this session. It's a rig that I use loads. It's my favorite 𝗏𝗏 presentation, which is just a 𝗏𝗏 presentation with a little D rig kicker on there. Hook bait wise, I'm using different things on each rod to see which is working best. But on this occasion, I'm using a 15mm monster shrimp wafter. If you're really trying to get that extra distance, I would recommend cutting down to a 12mm. That will help add a few extra yards to your cast. In this instance, I don't need it, but if I was trying to get an extra 10-15 yards, it would be something that I'd consider. In terms of the boom section, I'm using fluoro link. It's really important to use a stiff hook link. You put so much power through that cast, it's quite susceptible for a tangle if you're using a soft braid or a semi-stiff coated braid. A nice stiff hook link is key here, and I'm fishing over a clean bottom, so I don't have to be worried about that sticking up or anything. That's also why I'm using a leg clip. Like I said, it's a nice clean bottom there, so I don't have to be worried about any presentation issues. I also do prefer fishing this when I can. I just think it hooks the carp much better than a helicopter presentation. In terms of the lead I'm using, again, this is quite important. A tournament style lead will add yards to your cast. It's much better than fishing a less aerodynamic lead presentation that will take a few yards off your cast. I've not gone crazy with the rig tubing here. Putting too much on, it will drag down your cast and it will take a little bit of distance off. So yeah, just a nice small section, just to help pin it down. That's all I need here. So that's my presentation there. It's a presentation I use pretty much all the time when I'm fishing at distance. Like I said, the only tweak I'd make if I wanted to add even more yards to the cast would be to go a little bit smaller with a hook bait. But yeah, that's what I've been using. Catch me a few fish. Let's see if we can catch me any more. Well, sadly, those morning bites I was hoping for didn't quite materialise. Bit gutted, but we can't complain too much. I think we've had 6 bites, 5 fish landed in 24 hours. Yeah, can't really complain at that. Hope you enjoyed watching this. Hope you learned a few things about fishing at range. And yeah, I'll catch you guys at the next one.